What I mean by the middle is that you have to make a conscious decision at some point where you want to be. What kind of company do you want to be? Do you want to be the little guy where you're doing all the work? Do you want to play in the middle ground where you've got people doing the work for you and you're kind of running the office and doing the sales and you're still pretty hands on with the business, but you're not out in the field? Or do you want to jump on up to the big time where you're actually creating a business that's going to be millions and millions of dollars in revenue, where you might be able to spend a month and a half of each year in another country or on the beach or at your mountain home or something like that? You really built a company that is actually making some money, that's actually producing revenue, and it's doing so, it's spinning off a lot of nice money for you, and it's doing so where it's giving you a lifestyle where you don't have to be at that business every day. You've really created a company. Really, to take it a step further, you've created an asset that's going to pay you for the rest of your life, or you're going to be able to cash out one of these days and walk away from with a lot of money. Well, when you're the little guy doing the work and you're moving up the ranks to the big guy where you're not doing the work anymore, and maybe you've actually built a really good company where you don't have to be there every day, your net margin is not going to be steady. It's not going to be 12%, 12%, 12% as you go up the ranks. It's going to move up and down. Sometimes it may even go negative. So I'll give you an example. At our company, we have a very nice gross, and we are making a lot of net. We haven't always made a lot of net. So there were years that I took no money out of this business. This was a personal decision, and so don't get discouraged. It does not have to be this way for you. But my personal decision was I wanted to be 100% debt free. I wanted to reinvest the money in the company, and I wanted to grow fast, and I wanted to hire guys that could help us grow the business, and I was willing to spend the money to hire them before we really had enough room for them in the company. And we still do that to this day. So in the very beginning, I also was unwilling to do all the operational work. I could have actually made money from day one had I done the operational work. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to work on the bigger picture stuff. I never worked in the field in this business. I've got field experience going back, because back in the beginning when I was in high school, I started mowing lawns, and I've done the field stuff. I understand it at some level. And I got out there and did the infield selling and dealt with the customers, so I learned all that. But my point is, I didn't want to be the guy out in the field, and then I didn't want to be the guy running operations. So very quickly, we hired somebody to run the operations of the company. And so because of that, I sacrificed an income from this business for quite some time to really reinvest in it so that I could work on my other businesses. I've always had multiple companies at the same time. So that was a sacrifice I made. For most people, that's not the case. If you do it right, very quickly, you should be able to take an income out of your business. So I kind of got off track, but the reason I say all that is I want to make the point that when you're the little guy out in the field, and so you're making a salary, you're working in the field with your people, you might be able to make 70 grand a year. And I don't know what that real number would be. But you might be able to make a nice amount of money, and if you looked at that number compared to your gross revenue, it's a really nice net profit margin. It looks really good. Well, that's because you're one of the guys doing the work. You're actually producing revenue for the company as a laborer. So everything looks great. Your expenses are super low. You don't have an office. You don't really have a marketing budget. A lot of the expenses are non-existent. Maybe you've been in business a couple years now and the equipment and truck you have are now paid off, so you don't have those expenses. You just don't have much expense, so your net margin's really high. Then one day you decide, you know what? This game of doing all the work myself is not going to work. This is not the life I want. This isn't what I was signed up for. Long term, it's not going to accomplish my goals. I'm ready to move to the next level. I want to get out of the field. So what do you got to do? Well, you're going to watch your net go, whoosh, it's going to go down for a period of time. Hopefully not too long, but it's going to drop because now you just went and maybe got an office. Now you've probably started to do some marketing. You got out of the field, meaning you had to hire somebody to replace you, so you're now not producing money. You might be selling, but you're not actually generating labor dollars. You're not earning money for the company. Somebody else is. You got that new person on the payroll. You had to go buy another truck. You had your truck. Now you just had to buy somebody else's truck. Maybe you had to replace a little equipment. Now you got a little debt. Maybe you have some young kids at the house now and you had to move out into a small office. All kinds of things happen. So now you wake up and you've got all these new expenses, but you don't have double the revenue because you left the field, you incurred new expenses, but you haven't doubled the business yet. All of a sudden your net margin has just gone boom. It's gone way down, significantly down. In fact, you're probably not going to take the income you were taking in the field if you were taking all the money out of the business and not reinvesting. So you had this nice margin and boom, it just dropped. You got to sell like crazy and market like crazy to get that back up. And then you got to hire the next crew. And it's this game. And then one day you decide, hey, we're going to expand into landscape. We were maintenance. So now you've got to go hire the expertise for that. The truck, you got to buy a Bobcat. Hopefully you don't do that right away, but you've got some new expenses, boom, margins down again. And it's this game. It's this game of investment in your business. Everything levels out. You fill up all your crews to capacity. Your margins are up here. Then you reinvest. You invest in the next crew. You invest in the next service item you're going to offer. You get even more aggressive on marketing. Margins sink. You fill up capacity. They're back up. You make a massive investment. You buy land, you buy a building, and you have to outlay quite a bit of money. Or you change your buying equipment strategy and you start buying all your equipment at the end of the year for tax reasons and paying cash for it. Boom, margins drop. So your net margins are this as you grow your business. The faster you grow, the harder it is to have big margins. In this industry, you're not going to have sky-high margins and grow your business at super fast speed and not get outside capital. So in my case, I don't want investor money. I want to own the whole thing. I want to grow it steady. I want to be debt-free, and I want to grow it fast. That's just my strategy. Most people don't operate that way, but that's how I want to do it. So we pay cash for everything as we go, and we just operate, I guess you would say, somewhat conservatively. But it gives me peace of mind. I know my business is super stable. It's going to be around. It's highly diversified. When we see an opportunity to hire somebody that, it's kind of cost me $55,000 a year, plus all the perks and the truck and all that, I can jump on that opportunity and take it because they can help us go next level, and we do it. And we're to that point. That stuff affects our net margins. Now, the bigger you get, then there's some stabilization where your margins aren't having these giant dips. So when you're little and you got one crew and now you add a second, it's a big drop. When you have 10 crews and you add a crew, it's a teeny tiny little drop. And probably by that time you're selling work so fast, you're stabilizing really quick. So that's kind of a background on net profits and how it works. If you want to grow really slow, then your net profits have the ability to hold. Actually, I was going to say they have the ability to hold more steady. But the downside is if you grow really slow and you add a new crew with all the laborers, the truck, and the equipment, and you're not filling that crew to capacity very fast, that really sucks your net profit for a while. It sucks money out of the business. So think of every new crew as its own little business segment. It's a new investment. Think of every new service you offer. So if you just do lawn care and bush trimming, and now you want to get into fertilization and weed control, that's like its own little separate business. It's its new investment. You got to go buy the truck, you got to buy the tanks, the pumps, you got to learn, you got to get licensed, you got to hire an employee to do the work. Or if you're going to go do the work, now there's something you're not doing, there's selling you're no longer doing, there's phones that aren't being answered, there's something you're not doing that is being given up because you probably weren't sitting around the house watching TV. So that little business has an opportunity cost. It's an investment. It's going to affect your profits. It's going to increase your overhead costs, maybe because you financed a $30,000 truck and equipment. Whatever the case may be, it's going to affect your business. So every time you get distracted with a new crew, a new service offering, it all affects net. And you had better be willing to handle it, or you better be willing to get out there and sell fast and sell profitable work to overcome the new expenses and new overhead and burden that you've just taken on. All that stuff affects net. So